He came on a Tuesday first, said he had a delivery for someone named, and he gave a name, not her name, a name that had never belonged to anyone in that house. She told him he had the wrong address. He apologized, left. He came back on Thursday. Same name, same story, different excuse for why he'd come back to the same wrong address. He wasn't delivering anything. He was checking something. He was checking whether she was alone, whether she answered the door, whether the house was worth coming back to. Jade worked from home, freelance graphic designer. Her flat was her office, her studio, her whole world on most days. She liked it that way. The quiet, the control, the independence of being entirely in her own space. She lived alone. She was proud of the fact that she lived alone. She would later understand that this information, the aloneness, the predictability of her schedule, the fact that she answered the door by herself every single time, was exactly what someone was cataloging. The delivery man first came on a Tuesday in early November. She opened the door. He was cheerful. He had a name. Marcus Webb, he said, was expecting a parcel. Did she know if Marcus Webb lived nearby? She said she didn't. She said no one by that name lived at this address. He apologized warmly, said there must have been an error in the system, and left. She thought nothing of it. Wrong addresses happen. He came back Thursday. Different story. This time he had a refrigerated item, needed a signature. The address was definitely listed as this one. Was she sure there was no Marcus Webb? He was very apologetic, very friendly. She said again, wrong address. He left again. She came back the following Monday. The third time, she didn't open the door. She looked through the peephole. He was standing there in his uniform, hands at his sides, not holding anything, and he was standing slightly to the side of the door, not directly in front of it. Standing where a person stands when they are listening for sounds from inside rather than waiting to be answered. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She just watched. He stood there for 47 seconds. Then he left. She stood in her hallway for a long time after his footsteps faded. Her heart was doing something her brain was only just beginning to catch up with. She Googled it. Delivery man, wrong address. She found the forums quickly. The threads on home security communities, on neighborhood watch pages, on crime prevention sites. And there it was, laid out plainly. A common pre-burglary tactic. A person knocks claiming to have a delivery. If the door is answered, they note who answered it and when and whether they appeared to live alone. If there is no answer, they note the house appears empty. They come back multiple times to establish a pattern. Who is home, when, how often. Whether the occupant is a man, a woman, elderly, a family, single. Whether there are dogs. Whether there are security cameras. Every visit is data. Jade sat in her flat in the quiet of a Tuesday afternoon and understood that she had been studied. She called the non-emergency police line. She filed a report. She bought a video doorbell. She told her neighbor, an older man named Gerald, who'd lived in the building 15 years and had a tendency to notice things. 2 weeks passed. Nothing. 3 weeks. She woke up at 2:17 a.m. to a sound at her back window. Not a bang, not a crash, a patient, methodical pressing at the frame, the sound of something being tested. Then voices, low, 2 of them. She grabbed her phone. She called 999 before she was fully awake. She locked herself in the bathroom. She sat on the floor with her back against the bath, phone pressed to her ear, listening to the operator's calm voice in one ear and the sounds of 2 men trying to enter her home in the other. The police arrived in 4 minutes. They found 2 men at the rear of the building. One had tools, one had the layout of the flat sketched on a piece of paper, hand-drawn, annotated, including which rooms the lights were on in during his visits. He had been taking notes. He had done this 3 times, and on each visit he had mapped the flat a little more carefully. The delivery uniform, it turned out, was real. He worked part-time for a logistics company. He used his legitimate access to residential streets to scout addresses. Both men were arrested. Jade gave a statement at 3 a.m. wrapped in a blanket on her own sofa while a police officer sat across from her and wrote things down. She changed her locks the next day. She installed more cameras. She moved Gerald's number to her favorites. And she never, ever answered the door without checking first. Not once, not ever. He visited her 3 times. 3 times to establish her routine, her solitude, her schedule. 3 times to map the flat she lived in alone. He would have come a 4th time, through the back window, at 2 in the morning, if she hadn't noticed the pattern, if she hadn't trusted the feeling that something was wrong, if she hadn't made that call. So the next time someone has the wrong address and they come back, think about what they're really looking for, because it isn't a parcel. It was Christmas night. The kids had opened their presents, the dishes were done, the family was exactly where a family should be on Christmas night, warm, together, safe inside their own home. And then someone knocked on the door. At 11:30, the Morrison family would spend the next 3 hours in their own living room with a man they had never met, who believed with absolute certainty that he had every right to be there. He was wrong. He was very wrong. But that didn't make him any less terrifying. The knocking had started in late November. The Morrison family had moved into the house in Parkhead 6 months earlier, a semi-detached on a quiet enough street, a fresh start, the kind of house that needed work but had good bones. The first knock came on a Wednesday night, hard, heavy knocking, the kind that means urgency. The father, Duncan, opened the door to find nobody there. The front garden was empty. The street was wet and quiet. He put it down to kids, knocky 9 doors, a Glasgow rite of passage. The second knock was on a Friday. Same pattern, heavy, insistent, and by the time the door opened, nothing. The third was the week after, at nearly midnight. Too late for kids. Duncan stood on his front step in the rain and looked up and down the street and saw nothing, and felt the peculiar, cold unease of a person whose instincts are telling them something, but whose brain hasn't yet agreed. He told his wife, Allison. She told him it was probably the boiler. The 4th, 5th, and 6th knock came in December, never when someone was watching from a window, always when the family was settled, at rest, unsuspecting. On Christmas night, they stopped wondering what it was. His name, they would eventually learn, was Bobby. He announced himself by pushing past Duncan in the doorway and walking directly into the living room as if navigating from muscle memory. He sat in the armchair. He looked around at the tree, the presents, the family's belongings, and his expression was not the expression of an intruder. It was the expression of a man who had come home. "This is my house," he said, not aggressively, conversationally. "I grew up here. I used to live here." Duncan stood in the doorway of his own living room and explained, carefully and then less carefully, that no, this was not Bobby's house, that Bobby had not lived here, that whatever Bobby thought he remembered, he was wrong. Allison was already at the top of the stairs, herding the children back into the bedroom, speaking low and steady, the voice of a mother keeping panic from her children's faces. Duncan called the police. Bobby didn't try to leave. Bobby picked up a Christmas decoration from the windowsill and turned it over in his hands and said, very quietly, that he remembered buying this. He had never seen it before in his life. The police were on their way.
Bobby seemed to sense this. His demeanor changed, not suddenly, but in the way weather changes, something tightening. He stood up, he moved toward the window, he looked out at the street, and then Duncan asked him to leave, and Bobby picked up the nearest thing. He put his fist through the window pane, not at Duncan, not at the children upstairs, just through the glass, as if the window owed him something, as if the house had failed him in some way. The cold poured in, glass scattered across the floor. Bobby stood with his hand bleeding and his face doing something complicated that was neither rage nor grief, but some broken combination of both. And then he stood in the destroyed window frame and yelled up toward the ceiling, toward where the children were, things that Allison would not repeat to the police officer later because she did not want those words to exist anywhere outside her own memory where she had already decided to bury them. 2 police officers, 3 minutes. Bobby was removed. He was cautioned and eventually charged. The family spent Christmas night with a plastic bag taped over a broken window and 4 children who had heard things they should not have heard on a night that was supposed to be magical. The knocking, they realized later, had been Bobby visiting his old house for weeks, confirming something, working up to it, working up to Christmas night. Bobby was someone who used to live in that house, or thought he did, or needed to believe he did so badly that the difference stopped mattering. The knocking had been him, returning again and again to a home he had invented or remembered or lost so long ago that returning to it felt more real than the rest of his life. Nobody can tell you exactly why he came on Christmas night specifically. Maybe it was the lights in the window. Maybe it was the sound of children inside. Maybe Christmas made the loss of whatever he thought he'd lost unbearable, and a stranger's warmth was the closest thing to it. That doesn't make what he did acceptable, but it makes the knocking, all those weeks, all those dark November nights, make a different kind of sense. The kind that is sadder than it is frightening, and somehow, because of that, more frightening than anything.
Her husband was deployed. That was the thing that mattered. That was the thing the man in the yellow jacket knew, or found out, or guessed, and decided to make use of. A woman, alone with her children, husband across the world, a house with lights on inside, and no man's car in the driveway. He came on a Monday. He came on a Wednesday. He came on a Friday. Rachel and her 2 children, Daniel, 11, and Sophie, 8, had settled into the rhythm of deployment. Her husband, Corporal Mark Hennessy, was in his 4th month overseas. They had done this before. They knew the shape of it, the missing presence, the extra responsibility, the particular loneliness of being in charge of everything. They were managing. On Monday evening at around 10 o'clock, when both children were in bed and Rachel was reading downstairs, someone knocked on the front door. She looked through the window first. She had learned to do that. A man in a bright yellow rain jacket, standing on her doorstep, banging on the door, not a polite knock, banging, the flat-handed bang of someone making a statement. She did not open the door. She called out, "Who's there?" He didn't answer. He banged again, 3 times. Then he turned and walked away down the path, and she heard footsteps on the wet pavement, and then nothing. She called her neighbor, Carol. Carol came over and sat with her for 2 hours. Wednesday, he was back. Same time, same jacket. This time he yelled something. She couldn't make out the words through the door and the rain, only the shape of a voice that was aggressive and male and certain. She called the police non-emergency line. They noted it. Friday, he was back again. This time, Daniel had heard him.
Daniel was 11 years old and standing at the top of the stairs with his jaw set tight in the specific way of a boy trying to be the man of the house because no one asked him to be and he decided to do it anyway. Rachel told him to go back to his room. She said it was nothing. She said it quietly and firmly, and she waited until she heard his bedroom door close before she let herself be afraid. And then one night, he stopped knocking. Rachel and her two children, Daniel, 11, and Sophie, 8, had settled into the rhythm of deployment. Her husband, Corporal Mark Hennessy, was in his 4th month overseas. They had done this before. They knew the shape of it, the missing presence, the extra responsibility, the particular loneliness of being in charge of everything. They were managing. On Monday evening at around 10 o'clock, when both children were in bed and Rachel was reading downstairs, someone knocked on the front door. She looked through the window first. She had learned to do that. A man in a bright yellow rain jacket, standing on her doorstep, banging on the door, not ringing the bell, not a polite knock, banging, the flat-handed bang of someone making a statement. She did not open the door. She called out, "Who's there?" He didn't answer. He banged again, 3 times. Then he turned and walked away down the path, and she heard footsteps on the wet pavement, and then nothing. She called her neighbor, Carol. Carol came over and sat with her for 2 hours. Wednesday, he was back. Same time, same jacket. This time he yelled something. She couldn't make out the words through the door and the rain, only the shape of a voice that was aggressive and male and certain. She called the police non-emergency line. They noted it. Friday, he was back again. This time, Daniel had heard him. Daniel was 11 years old and standing at the top of the stairs with his jaw set tight, in the specific way of a boy trying to be the man of the house because no one asked him to be, and he decided to do it anyway. Rachel told him to go back to his room. She said it was nothing. She said it quietly and firmly, and she waited until she heard her bedroom door close before she let herself be afraid. 3 weeks after the last visit, Rachel had begun to breathe again. She had told herself it was over. A neighbor's dispute with the wrong address, a drunk, something random that had attached itself to her house and then moved on. She had stopped jumping at sounds. She had stopped listening for footsteps on the path. She was asleep at 2 a.m. when she heard something downstairs. Not the door, not a knock. The soft, specific creak of the 3rd stair from the bottom, the one that always creaked, the one that Daniel always tried to avoid when he came down for water at night. She was fully awake before the sound had finished. She grabbed her phone, she grabbed the heaviest thing on her bedside table, she opened her bedroom door, and she stood at the top of the stairs in the dark, and she said, loudly, clearly, with all the steadiness she could assemble, "I've called the police. I have a weapon. Get out of my house." She called 999 with shaking hands. When police arrived, they found the back kitchen window had been forced. Items were missing from the living room: a laptop, her wallet from the kitchen counter, and from Sophie's bedside table, a small jewelry box, a child's jewelry box with a ballerina on top. From beside her sleeping 8-year-old's bed. They had been inside before Rachel woke up. They had been upstairs. Mark was called when it was already over. Rachel gave him the facts carefully and in the right order, so that the most frightening parts landed last, and she could already be saying, "We're all right," before he had time to react to the worst of it. She didn't tell him about the 3rd stair for a long time. She didn't tell him about Sophie's bedside table for longer. The man in the yellow jacket, the bright, impossible-to-miss yellow jacket, he wore it because he had a reason to be on the street. CCTV would show a delivery worker, a council worker, someone with a job to do. Just a man in a yellow jacket. Nothing to worry about.